Morning. Certainly not a good morning. So morning. I normally riff about racing on these little walk and talks. Don't think I'll be talking about Warnie winning at Pakenham or Ray McNear at Ascot today. No, only one topic. This morning, and of course, unfortunately, that's Bondi. The entirely predictable occurrences in Bondi. Now, of course, the specifics couldn't be predicted, but mass murder of Australian Jews is entirely unsurprising. And if you've enjoyed any of the stuff I've put on social media over the last 2 years and 2 months, you will know I'm not being a Monday's expert on this one. Because this is cause and effect of what happens when you demonise a community, which the Australian Jews have been demonised, and when others turn their head on it, right? Said nothing. Okayed it. You know, what's wrong with filling the Melbourne streets, city streets, with hate every Sunday for 2 years and 2 months? And hate is what it's been. Hate. So it leads to an inevitable conclusion, and that is the fatalities in Bondi yesterday. So first, a positive. Yes, there is a positive in anything if you look hard enough. And Ahmed Al-Ahmed is the positive. I don't know that he's Muslim. I read a bit about him. The limited parts that are there. I assume he's a Muslim. And I'm very confident in saying if he's not an Ajax or Mount Scopus old boy. But of course he's the man who selflessly and courageously disarmed the piece of work that was doing his massacre. Now that is Australia. So when I see people saying Australia's fallen and Australia's changed forever, well, the thoughts towards condoning scum hopefully have changed forever. Australia hasn't changed forever. What Ahmed did was digger worthy, wasn't it? That was enormous. And I hope he becomes Australian of the Year. And if he is Muslim, he stands out for another reason. Because in the 2 years and 2 months of impetuous hate against the Australian Jewish community, where have the Muslim leaders been in calling it anti-Semitism? Been a lot of playing the victim. Apparently Islamophobia has risen. Dr. Susan Carland, or Mrs. Waleed Ali, did a big report for Monash University about it. Google that one. Maybe she can work out how Bondi is now raised the amount of Islamophobia. But Waleed Ali, anything from him? I know on the project, I don't know if he was on that night, but I remember when there were phlegm teenagers chanting Allahu Akbar through the Melbourne city streets. They got a couple of those little kids on, you know, the teenagers are so funny. You know, they're just talking about how, you know, Allahu Akbar, just like was chanted after 9/11 and Bali, where Australians were murdered. And that's the point, isn't it? So you have to be nearly 40 now to remember as an adult. You have to be 40. Bali and or 9/11. So a generation don't know or didn't know what the reality of terror is and terrorism. And now they do. Bashir Houli? Nope. Usman Khawaja. Now Usman. All life matter on his cricket boots. Let's put the full context there. Because that was after he tried posting pro-Palestinian stuff. And Cricket Australia rightly said, no, you can't use your platform for political purposes. So instead of actually putting some skin in the game and risking a fine or a dropping. No, all lives matter. This is Osman, who didn't post anything after October 7 and hasn't done anything, to the best of my knowledge, happily stand corrected, against local anti-Semitism. Nope. But all lives matter. And then yesterday he puts out, he's heartbroken by the lives lost. Go on, Aussie, you can say it. Jewish lives lost. Go on, Aussie, you can say it. Terrorist, murderous, racist terrorists that wiped out Jewish people for the crime of being Jews. Heartbroken for their lives lost. No words. You can have words, Aussie. Anti-Semitic, un-Australian scum. Try using those words. Then we'll think you're mildly fair dinkum. Well, we're on a roll. Sydney Swans. Similarly, couldn't mention the word Jews. That's the Qatar Airlines sponsor, Sydney Swans. Has there been some hypocrites? Now, I am Jewish. Let me say some context here. I'm not a practicing Jew. My immediate family aren't Jewish. I don't believe in God. I'm a Jewish atheist. My father's funeral happens to be tomorrow, and it will be a non-religious ceremony. But his parents somehow escaped the Nazis, and as it was, 6 years ago I was outside a Polish jail, North Poland, Białystok, where my grandmother was thrown into, accused of being a spy by the Russians as she escaped the Nazis doing their pogrom through Warsaw. And at the time, my oldest uncle was a baby and he was thrown in an orphanage. This was 5 years before my dad was born. So we talk about odds and probabilities in racing. What odds? Me actually getting to be there 80 years later outside where she was thrown in. So that's the context of why I say I'm Jewish. And as David Baddiel, the English comedian, says, and if you're interested, I recommend Jews Don't Count as a documentary if you can find it. When the Nazis were doing their work, they weren't checking if you observed the Sabbath on a Friday night or Saturday. No, they just murdered you for your race. As were people in Bondi last night, murdered for their race. But we've forgiven this. I just asked the pro-Palestinian people who have thought it a nice trendy thing post-October 7, where in a functioning democracy, people were murdered for their race. Why just that cause? And whatever, and I've never defended the Israeli government, but the fact is it's been a response to October 7. Why nothing about the Ukraine kids? What's been Russia's justification for their war? All war's horrible, yep. If you want to say it's horrific what's happened to Palestinian kids, you're right, war's horrible. I haven't tweeted anything about it, put on any other social platform. What I've said is that if you try and justify the slaughter of people based on their race, which is what October 7 was, and which is what members of the Media and Entertainment Arts Alliance of Australia did, within 6 weeks of it happening, they needed to put out a statement saying reporting of it required historical context. You know, the war didn't start October 7. It was a functioning democracy. People were at a music festival and they were gunned down. And automatically there was justification for it. So I wonder if these scum, filth, will be putting out anything about Bondi saying it needs historical context. Stop defending the indefensible, call it out, and for God's sake, let's hope nothing further happens, but it probably will.